Now that you have your cutting board all designed, let's start making it. First step is we need to rough the length on the miter saw to 16.5 inches. Don't forget, we've got a mark on the miter saw. This is just a rough cut, so we can slide our board up to the mark and make the cut. Next step, we need to flatten and smooth this edge and make it square to the surface. We're going to use the jointer for that. Here we are at the joiner. Remember, look for the crown. The crown is going to go up. Now we have to rip to width. On the table saw, we're going to rip to 1 3/4 of an inch. Now we have to prepare for glue up. First thing we need to do is put newspaper down on the glue up bench. We wouldn't want to get it dirty. Now we're going to need 3 bar clamps. The bar clamps have a silver tab. We have the orange. You squeeze the two together to allow it to move. Don't forget to retract the clamp as far as it can go. Lefty-loosey. Now that we have our newspaper down, bar clamps out, arrange all your pieces on top of the bar clamps. Notice I've included 2 extra pieces, scrap wood pieces, that are going to go between your project and the bar clamps so that the bar clamps don't dent your project. I've got my glue out, ready to go. So what we're going to do now is we're going to start gluing up our strips. So what we do, apply the glue, spread the glue just with your finger. We want a nice, even, light coat of glue on the entire surface of one side of the board. Put it in position. Remember, don't glue these 2 together. This was a scrap wood piece. Next board. Slide the pieces together, line them up. The edges, the ends, should be relatively lined up. Okay? They don't have to be perfect, but relatively straight. I'm going to show you a bad example. Right? So this was a bad example. The ends were not lined up at all. So what we need to do is we really need to cut off this whole entire chunk to make it look even. So continue gluing up your strips.
Did I come in?
All right, now that we have all our strips glued up, don't forget we're not going to put any glue on the last strip. This was my scrap wood piece. We have to close up the clamps. One last time we can do our best job as we can with aligning the edges. What we're going to do now is we're going to apply some pressure, just light pressure to start with. Try and go even on both of them. Making sure they're all sitting down flat on the bar. Just applying even pressure. I'll place my 3rd bar clamp across the top. And now we're going to tighten up all 3. I can see one of my pieces moved, so I'm going to loosen it back up. I can hit that with a mallet to get that back down. Tighten them back up. I can see one of the pieces moved a little bit, so I'm going to go ahead and loosen this back up. Could use a wooden mallet. And I'll tighten them back up again. Alright, it's all glued up,
clamped up, one last step, absolutely positively necessary. You need to write your name on one of your boards, and I don't mean your initials, I mean your name and your period. After the glue is dried for 24 hours, we're ready to take it out of the clamps. For most of us, you won't be around to take it out of the clamps, so we'll take it out for you. That's why it was so important for your name and period to be on. So you might have to take the project out of the clamps for somebody else. All right, lefty loosey, loosen that up. Lefty loosey, lefty loosey. And sometimes you'll find that the project is glued to the bar clamps. So you're going to have to tap it a little bit to get that to come out. All right? Doesn't really look too good now. Let's look at the backside. Oh, it even looks worse than the backside. But don't worry, I've got just a trick to clean this up and make this look beautiful. So before we really make our board look beautiful, we got lots of excess glue squeeze out that's formed down here. The glue is really hard and it'll chip the blades on our jointer and planer. So what we're going to do first is we're going to scrape this a little bit. So I know you all been wondering why these holes are in the table. That's for the holes, or for these, they're called a bench dog. So what we're going to do, there's also a dog on the vise, so you slide that up. We'll open up the vise a bit, and yes, the handles are missing for a reason, because kids, students just play with them all day long. So the bench dog goes in the hole. Now we close up the vise. We're going to use a bench scraper, okay? And it's really important that we've got our project in between the vise, because when you use the bench scraper, absolutely positively have to have two hands on the scraper. Okay, I don't want you trying holding the board, two hands on the scraper, one hand on the handle, the other one you just make a fist and you push down on it. We don't have to go too crazy, we just want to get those little bits of glue off. Now we're ready to smooth out the top surface and the bottom surface of the board. We're going to use the surface planer to do that. Now we're ready to smooth out the top surface and the bottom surface. We're going to use this machine, the surface planer. Bring your board to your teacher. Your teacher's going to operate this for you. You're going to assist the teacher, but the teacher is in charge of this machine. Now we're ready to smooth out the top surface and the bottom surface. We're going to use the surface planer to do this job. Bring your board to your teacher. teacher is going to operate the machine. You'll just assist. After several passes, it'll be nice and smooth. Next step, we have to square the ends. Right now you can see they're all kind of jagged, so we have to square the ends. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to use a framing square. We hook the framing square on this edge. So I hook that on. I want to draw a square line, a line square to this edge, taking off as little as possible of the end of our cutting board. So we're looking for the shortest piece. I've got my line. I'll do the same thing on this end. And now we can take this over to the miter saw to square the end. Now that you've marked a square line and the ends of the cutting board, it's time to square the ends. So I've lined up my saw blade with the line. Now what we need to do is we need to clamp this down. So we're going to use this clamp, put a scrap piece of wood underneath it, It's got to be flat on the table, up against the fence. And clamp this down securely so that it can't move. This is a big, wide board now. It's thick, it's hardwood. So what we need to do is when we cut this, we're just going to go slow, take our time. Loosen the clamp, flip it around, and do the other end. Now we're ready to apply that decorative edge with the handheld router. First thing you want to do is you want to look for, is there one surface of the board that looks better than the other? Inspect the board. I think I want this to be the top, so this is the side I'm going to router. Again, we're going to use the bench dogs. We're going to clamp the board down. Don't forget, we router end grain first. So my router's all set up for me, ready to go. End grain first. The other end. Now the edge. we have a nice routered edge. The next step is to lay out the holes for the feet. We're going to do this on the bottom, so the opposite side from the routered edge. So we flip this over. What we want to do is we want to measure in 1.5 inches and down 1.5 inches and put a mark. So 1.5 inches in, 1.5 inches down. We're going to do it here, 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 and here. I'm going to use the combination square to achieve that. Loosen up the thumb screw. The ruler will slide. Adjust the ruler so that it's reading 1.5 inches. Tighten the thumb screw. What I'm going to do is I hook my combination square on the edge, and I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to make a mark. And then I'll hook my combination square on the end, and I'll make a mark. So now I've got X marks the spot. That's where the hole is going to go. I'm going to do all 4 holes. Now that I've got X marked a spot for all 4 holes, before I go to the drill press, what I want to do is I want to put a dimple. I want to mark where that hole is going to be so that the drill press, the drill in the drill press doesn't wander or walk. So I'm going to use an awl. This is what we call a carpet awl. I put the point directly at X marks the spot, give it a little tap, so I've got those little dimples so that now I can take it to the drill press and my drill won't wander or walk on me. So here we are at the drill press. We've got our 1/2 inch Forstner bit all chucked up in the drill. We've got our holes marked and dimpled. What we want to do before turning it on, come on over, see if you can line up this drill bit with the hole that you marked. Now what we can do, turn it on. Slowly feed the drill bit in. And that right there is how deep we want to go. We just want to go down the depth of the head on the drill bit. We're going to do that for all 4 holes. Looking nice.
next step in the process would be to rough sand. So from our video on sanding, we know you're going to start with 80 grit. You're going to spend some time with 80 grit, and you're going to get the bumps out that the planer left. So we're going to sand the whole entire thing with 80. So I'm thinking, you're sanding for 15, 20 minutes with 80 grit. Right? Then you're going to move on down the line. You'll get down to the 120. So if you spent 15 or 20 minutes with 80, now you might be talking about 7 to 10 minutes with the 120, right? And then before we go on to the fine, I have another step for you that we'll demonstrate at some point. What we're going to do is we're going to raise the grain. So just keep in mind, raising the grain means you're going to take a wet paper towel, you wet the whole thing down, let it dry, and then you can move on down the line to the finish of 220. Well, after we have the board rough sanded and medium sand, we're ready to come down to our fabrication lab and use the laser engraver, and we're going to engrave in a note or a picture. After you have the rough and medium sand, you're going to come down to the laser engraver, which is down in the fabrication lab, and you're going to customize your cutting board. Once you have your cutting board rough and medium sanded, you're going to come down to the fabrication lab, and you're going to use the laser engraver to engrave in and design to personalize your cutting board. After laser engraving, you might have to do a little finish sanding to clean up the board. After the finish sanding, we're ready to put the feet, chair buttons in the hole. We're going to glue those in. There is no sense of putting glue down in the hole because it won't touch the button, right? So what we're going to do is we put glue on the edge of the button. We take the button, set it in the hole, and gently tap it in with a mallet. There'll probably be some glue squeeze out. So what we want to do is we want to wipe that up. After laser engraving, we'll have to do just a little bit of finish sanding, or maybe just wiping up our design with some alcohol, a little finish sanding. And then what we're doing, we're ready to apply our finish. So we're going to use butcher block oil. So this is food safe mineral oil. What happens here, you just squeeze it on your board. I got to open up the bottle. After you laser engrave, we might have to do a little finish sanding or maybe some alcohol to clean up the image a little bit. So
So we're just going to go ahead and we're going to make sure the board is ready to go, do our final sanding. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to apply some butcher block oil. So butcher block oil is pretty much just food safe mineral oil. We go ahead and we just squirt this on our board. We get a clean paper towel and we just rub it in. Not a lot of science to this, but just rub it all in. You're going to do the bottom, the top, the sides, the ends, and you can see it really brings out the color. So you're just going to go ahead and just keep rubbing it in and wipe off all the excess. We're going to do the end. The ends are really going to soak up a lot of oil. So you're going to go ahead and you're going to do the whole entire board. And then we need to put in our feet. Okay, so we're going to use these small little, we call them chair buttons. There's no sense of putting glue in the hole because it won't touch the button. So we apply glue to the outside edge cylinder of the feet. Put the feet in the hole. Tap it down a little bit. You can see we get a little squeeze out. So what we want to do is we want to wipe up that. We wipe up the squeeze out. We're going to put the buttons in all 4 holes. And then what happens after we put the buttons in all 4 holes, then what we need to do is we need to level the board. Not necessarily on this table. We have another nice flat table in the shop. We tip it over. What happens if the board rocks and rolls, we need to fix that, and so I will show you in another video how we do that. So that right there is the last step in the process planning of the cutting board. The next step would be to take this thing home and see the faces, the reactions on people's faces when you bring this thing home. All right, good luck.